What's up, everybody? It's been a while since I've done anything movie related here on my channel, so I figured let's get into some movies, right? Before I jump into this review or reviews, I do want to give a special shout out. Thank you to my Muddy Cold patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me here on my channel and also being super patient with new content lately. I know it's been really crazy. Life's weird, whatever. But I thank you so much for your support once again. If you want to become a Muddy Cold patron, the link is in the description below. I offer early access to what I'll be posting here, extra videos and unboxings and schedules of what I'll be doing, and also the opportunity to request things for me to either review or show on Discord, among other things. But there are other ways you can support me as well, not just monetarily. You can just hit the subscribe button below. Make that red button turn to a gray button, assuming that's the color scheme. Or it could be, black and white, or white and black. I don't know. Just be subscribed. That's all I got for you. So, I'm going to be doing a hybrid video, as you can probably not tell by the title at all. I don't know where I'm going with this. But I originally was planning on doing an unwrapped review of one of these movies, but I decided, you know what, let's just mash two ideas together and save time, save space. I don't know. So every year I do this thing called a Halloween horror endurance run. It's where I stream a bunch of horror movies on Halloween weekend. It's a 2-day event. I usually do it on the weekend of Halloween. Sometimes it's fallen on Halloween. And it is the only time I let people request movies they want to watch without being a patron. The only rule is you have to be there in attendance. I do post what I'm showing and what I'll be playing afterwards, so it gives the person ample enough of time to hop online and see their movie, and then they can dip out or whatever they want to do. But I've had lots of fun watching movies with you guys, not just during Halloween, but just all throughout the year. But October is a very special month, and I love horror movies. They're fantastic. There's so many different subgenres and different takes you can, execute what is scary to people all around the world, and I love taking advantage of October to sprinkle it with extra movie showings throughout the week, and the Halloween horror endurance run just gives me more reason to pull people into the season, and it's usually the time most people want to watch something spooky. So I just marathon a bunch of movies until I am tired. Hence the title, Halloween Horror Endurance Run. So I just go until I have no more endurance, and then I'm like, okay, that's it. That's the stream until tomorrow. And then I do it all over again, and then I tap out when I am tired. So that's how that goes. So obviously I will be doing it again this year, but this time around I wanted to make a, well, now not completely timely review video of all the movies that we watched last year. I really wanted to put this out in November, but a lot of things happened, so I'm still trying to get back into my groove of recording stuff more often. So hopefully this will be the start of a new thing. So I will say last year we watched more movies than we did the year before. I have my tablet here to look on my letterbox, and I will leave my letterbox name there, and y'all can follow me there or just see what we'll be streaming. There is a list of all the things that we have streamed on Discord thus far this year. Also last year and the year before, their list is there as well. And also, there is a list for the Halloween Horror Endurance Run for last year and the year before. So if you want to check out any of those movies, or you are just curious what we watched, you can look on my Letterboxd. You can also follow me if you want to. I don't really do too many reviews there because I try to put that on my blog, which is a thing that I am still working on. Maybe I might transfer it over, but sometimes I do reviews, but not very often. So last year we watched 50 movies, which is pretty astounding actually. Usually the first day, which I usually start on Saturday, I come home from work, so I have to start a little later than I would want. And Sunday I can start a little earlier, so I usually start about 12, 1 o'clock sometime in the afternoon, and then go from there. So that's usually my plan of attack when I do these Halloween Horror Endurance runs. So I usually just I make a whole list of movies I want to watch. I put them in some sort of order. I also put people's requests in a specific time slot. Roughly, I try to hit it in a time that I believe that person is the most available or the most awake. So I don't really push, Saturday's request too late in the day. But I also try not to put people's requests on Sunday too early in the day either, because most people want to do something earlier in the day, or it just makes the most sense. So, without further ado, let's jump into the hybrid part of it, which is unwrapping a movie. Yay! So I had the pleasure of finally watching a movie that has collected dust on my shelf for the longest, which is Kazuo Umezz Horror Theater, which I learned while I was logging this in is a collection series anthology that was on TV of 6 short films based on Kazuo Umezz's works. And I also realized that I'm reading one of his series that Wikipedia mentioned, which is The Drifting Classroom, and I'm almost done with it, and it is just pure madness. I look forward to reviewing it at some point, but I have recommended it to people. I swear I love them, but I'm just like, you have to join me in this madness. It is just absolutely crazy how much craziness happens in that series. So, this particular DVD that I have, if you're not familiar with his work, comes with the 2 short stories called House of Bugs and Diet. So I'm going to start with the first movie. I'll read the description per usual, and then I will tell you my thoughts. That's the format, right? So here we go. Starting with the House of Bugs. In the story about an unfaithful couple, Koji believes his cheating wife may no longer be human. Unsure of what to do next, he asks his lover to look in on his wife. Someone, it would seem, has lost their mind. So apparently, according to the back of this DVD, they do mention where these the director, the writer, and the actors, what movies they've done previously that might be recognizable to other people who are unfamiliar with, I guess, jumping into this, hey, if you like this, they wrote this, or directed, or they acted in this. So, I have seen 3 out of 4 of the movies that are mentioned on here. So, Kiyoshi Kurosawa is the director of this short. He did the movie Pulse. Actually, I lied. I've only seen half of these. I haven't seen the original Pulse yet. Oh wait, I have actually. No, this one was called. I have not seen Pulse yet. That is on my list. The writer is Sadayuki Murai, who I'm assuming wrote Millennium Actress, which is a Satoshi Kon animated movie, which I have seen, and I feel like I need to rewatch and give it another chance. But I did enjoy it. I just don't remember loving it as much as everyone did. but I feel like I need to give it like another viewing. And the 2 stars they mentioned on here is Hidetoshi Nishijima, who was in Cast Iron, which I have seen, but it's been a very long time, and Tamaki Ogawa, who was in Samurai Fiction, which I have not seen, nor have I heard of. But anyway, this was an interesting kind of, I don't want to say goofy, but it gave me like the same vibes as Tales of Japan, which I did an unwrapped review for. It's like that feeling of like, this is definitely of its time, and it's kind of silly, but it works, if that makes any sense. So, obviously by description, there's infidelity involved, and all of a sudden, the wife is just like, I just want to be a bug. I'm just a bug. I'm just watching you. How, like, it's interesting, and you question yourself as you're watching it, like, maybe she is turning into a bug, but maybe she's not. Maybe she's just crazy. But it's an interesting viewing experience. As much as the concept sounds hilarious, like watching it, it's not as silly. They executed very well enough that it does actually start to like convince you that like maybe this is actually happening, and I'm now kind of concerned, but also, dude, why you be cheating on this perfectly like loving woman who is trying to do the best she can to make you happy? And yeah, I enjoyed it. It's pretty good. That's all I gotta say. There's not much else I could add on to that. The second short movie that they added into this DVD is called Diet. When an overweight girl gets dumped by her lover, she resolves to impress him by going on an extreme diet. All goes well at first, but when she is reunited with her former lover, she begins to feel the hunger pains once again. So it looks like the only credits movie-wise are the writer, Hiroshi Takahashi, who did Ringu 1, 2, and The Ring 1 and 2. And it looks like only Kanji Suda has been in Ju-on the Grudge and The Great Yokai World, which I have not seen, but I've seen everything else. So I was trying to remember what happened in this one before I started filming, and I vaguely remember some stuff. Like I said, this was all the way back in October, and I'm filming this now in like May, so we're almost back in October again. Can't tell. But I do remember this was one of those like another kind of delusional type of story, but a little bit different. It kind of reminded me of another movie I've seen, and I can't say what it is because I feel like that would spoil it, but I was somewhat, not really nervous, but I was worried, for lack of a better word, that it was gonna be similar to another short movie that was in the ABCs of Death, which is called XXL, where it had the girl who was overweight and was very pressured to be skinny, and she goes into extremes to be thin and pretty. And it didn't quite go that route, but it was still quite unnerving and surprising in a way. And I just enjoyed how the story went, and I was somewhat surprised where, like, the conclusion of it all, because it reminded me of another movie that I can't say what it is because it would spoil this one, because it also had a twist that was very similar. But I really enjoyed this one. I like this one more than House of Bugs. So I feel like I need to like revisit both of these movies, like this whole DVD thing with the 2 shorts. but if I remember correctly, I really did like Diet more than House of Bugs. The premise was interesting, and execution and writing and the characters were interesting. It really quickly got you to latch onto the main character with her weight, and then it just makes you even more surprised what the conclusion ends up being, and you're just like, so this is what it actually is. So definitely worth the watch between the two. I mean, they're both worth watching, but I prefer Diet a little bit more. But watching both of these made me interested in watching the other 4 movies, and perhaps I'll do a review on them. I don't think I'll be buying the DVDs. I'm sure I'm just going to watch it online. But I do want to complete the whole series, since they're just shorts in a TV anthology. And so far I like Kazuo Umezz's work, so maybe I'll seek out the source material at some point. But definitely look out for that if you're ever interested in checking out more like Japanese horror movies. So there you go. That's the end of this unwrapping of the horror theater of House of Bugs and Diet. So now we gotta go into the other movies that I don't own that were streamed during the Halloween Horror Endurance Run. And I'm going to be looking at my tablet here to get all of the titles, and I will try to quickly go through all of them. So, after streaming these 2 short movies, we watched the first request, which was a patron of mine, which is Norma. Thank you so much, Norma, for supporting me and also suggesting this comedic horror tale. I don't know if you want to call it horror, but it's definitely a comedy with some horror sci-fi-ish aspects to it. She requested the 1983 Carl Reiner movie, The Man with Two Brains, which stars Steve Martin. And I am a fan of Steve Martin. He's a very funny guy. I was not opposed to this. I was very curious where it would go. So let me tell you a little bit about what Man with Two Brains is about. A brain surgeon tries to end his unhappy marriage to spend more time with a disembodied brain. Yeah, that pretty much sums up what the movie is. It is a very comedic tale of Steve Martin really wanting to reconnect with his loved one, and I'm trying to remember stuff from 6 months ago, which is insane. He has the hardest time trying to reconnect that love that he felt, and then he finally finds it, and so he just hears her talking, and I think his whole thing was trying to find the perfect body for her to be into, something like that. But what I can confidently say is that I had a fun time with this movie. I thought it was really funny. Like I said, I love Steve Martin. He's a very talented comedic actor, and I'm glad that she requested this, even though she wanted to jokingly request Dracula Dead and Loving It with Leslie Nielsen, which I told her, we are not watching this movie again. I have already streamed it twice. So we will be retiring that movie, and if anyone else watches this video and is waiting for that moment in October to request something, I will deny your Dracula Dead and Loving It request. We are not watching it. It's a great movie, but we've already seen it. Alright, so the next movie we watched was from 1976 called Schizo. A newly married woman becomes convinced someone from her past is stalking her, but nobody believes her until the bodies start to pile up. Sadly, because of time, I really don't remember this movie very well. And it doesn't look like I gave it too great of a score. I gave it 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So maybe that's not the fault of time. Maybe it's the fault of the movie in a way that it wasn't super memorable. I do remember having picked this movie for a challenge, and I've heard about this movie or seen the posters many a times of like movies that should be watched, or maybe there were like cult movies from the 70s or something like that. But I figured I'd give it a watch, and I guess all I can say is apparently it was an okay movie. I really don't remember this movie at all. And I paused filming for a moment just to look up a trailer, just to look up a scene, and like none of it looks familiar whatsoever. So, sorry for giving it probably the worst review, if at all, a non-review of this movie. But that's Schizo. I mean, probably look for other people's opinion on it if you want to watch it, but in short, apparently wasn't super memorable, so let's go with that. Following Schizo, I chose a movie that I wanted to see at Texas Framer Weekend, but I missed out on it because I was waiting in line for autographs. But I did see the original movie from Tobe Hooper, even though I've seen it a million times. Well, maybe not a million times. I've seen it more than once for sure. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. After 48 years of hiding, Leatherface returns to terrorize a group of idealistic young friends who accidentally disrupt his carefully shielded world in a remote Texas town. Okay, so I can say with this one, I do remember. Let's see if I gave it a good score. Actually, okay. Apparently, it looks like among the people that I follow, it's kind of, some people gave it pretty low score, like half star, 2-star, and then somewhere in the middle with a 3-star. Only one person gave it 4, so I guess I'm closer to that. So I gave it 3.5 on Letterboxd. I remember liking this movie. I didn't hate it as much as everyone did, but maybe, I don't know if it's because I'm not a hardcore Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan. I will say that. I have not seen all of them. I've seen some by choice. I don't intentionally plan on seeing more Leatherface movies unless a challenge requires me to. Like, I had to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Well, technically, I didn't have to watch it, but it was the only thing that like fit the prompt that I have not seen. So I can confidently say I've definitely seen one at least, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. I've seen number 2. I think I streamed it for a different Halloween Horror Endurance run or somewhere in October. I know I did stream it. I already said I've seen 3. I've seen this one. I think I've seen bits and pieces of Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, I think. I know I've seen like most of the one with Jessica Biel. So I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen a good chunk. I do like the first original one quite a lot. I have a lot of memories with it. Sleepover stuff. I was afraid of it until I found out, like, later in life as an adult that it actually isn't based on a true story. But you know, I live in Texas. These kinds of things actually could happen. I know it's based, like, it's inspired by real life serial killer Ed Gein, but I'm like, this kind of stuff in the backwoods little towns of Texas, hey, it could have happened. I don't know. It's very believable. Texas be crazy sometimes. But this particular one, I did enjoy it. I had fun with it. It did a lot of different, interesting things, bringing in the modern take of it all, and the premise, I mean, the characters were interesting and good, the kills were good. Also, all of this could have been avoided, which you can say about most horror movies. I will agree that since they brought back the original survivor of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie into this one, I felt like that she was like a complete waste, and I don't like the direction where her character went, and it reminded me of, what was her name? Nancy from The Craft, when she was in The Craft Legacy. I just thought that was... I didn't care for that. That's all I have to say. But there were some interesting, tense, bloody moments. And I was entertained. Will I say this is my favorite? No. Will I watch it again? Maybe. Probably not by choice, but I am not opposed to rewatching it. After that, I wanted to lighten the atmosphere, or what have you, with The Curse of Bridge Hollow, since we were already on Netflix, which stars Marlon Wayans. A Halloween-hating dad reluctantly teams up with his teenage daughter when an evil spirit wreaks havoc by making their town's decorations come to life. I thought this was a fun film in a different way than Texas Chainsaw Massacre was. I enjoy the comedy. Marlon Wayans was not annoying. Like, the jokes weren't things that I have seen from other movies that he's been in, and I've seen quite a few of his stuff, and probably not the important ones that I would get shamed for, but I enjoyed the comedy in it. I enjoyed the chemistry between him and his daughter and his family, and I enjoyed the adventure. It was definitely like a fun, family-friendly-ish movie that, is good for like the older kids that want to watch something kind of spooky, but doesn't seem, too kiddish. So I thought this was like a nice balance between some of the, well, it wasn't heavy stuff, but you get what I'm saying. Kind of the more mature R-rated type situations. So this was a nice little break. I did like it. I wouldn't mind watching it again for like another Halloween. It definitely has a good Halloween spirit, and I like the family aspect of it. I don't remember if I told like my own mom like about it, like, oh, this was actually pretty good. But I know I definitely said that for like Sextuplets. I think that's what it was, the other Marlon Wayans movie, which I also enjoyed too. It wasn't as like silly and dumb as I thought it was going to be. It was actually legit pretty funny and entertaining, just like this movie. Then we hopped onto Hulu to watch the 2022 version of Hellraiser. A young woman struggling with addiction comes into possession of an ancient puzzle box, unaware that its purpose is to summon the Cenobites, a group of sadistic supernatural beings from another dimension. So, I have seen the first and second Hellraiser movies. I've thought about watching more, but honestly, I wasn't like super crazy about the first one, and just me watching the second one, I was just like, well, maybe I'll like the second one a little bit more. And I felt about the same, where it's just like, well, I'm glad I watched this. This is one of those iconic, legendary, whatever movies. It has the iconic Pinhead, even though that's not actually his name. But, and I mean, I've seen them from afar, some of the Cenobites at, Frightmare before. But, yeah, I'm not a huge Hellraiser fan, but it is an interesting concept of, combining kind of like a bondage, sadistic punishment kind of horror to it with body horror. I don't know. Like I said, in short, it's a great concept. It just wasn't for me. Like, it's not a movie I would be like, yeah, let's watch Hellraiser. Out of the iconic, horror villains that we've come to know and love, more or less, Hellraiser's not my jam, but I was looking forward to checking out this one because it does feature a female, I guess, Pinhead replacement, and I've heard some, I know it had about a mixed bag of feelings to it, because I know there's some hardcore Hellraiser fans out there. but I also heard like visually and story-wise it was interesting. And I do agree, I did enjoy the visuals. As far as the story, I just kind of felt the same as I did with previous Hellraiser movies I've seen before, which is like, yeah, this was okay, and it was like executed well. It just didn't really grab me, and the finale, the climax of the movie was well done. So I wouldn't like knock it down as like this was a bad movie. It's just more of a this movie wasn't for me, and that's okay. I'm glad it's, you know, for somebody. But I mean, I think I enjoyed this one a little bit more than 1 and 2, more or less. But it definitely isn't like, this is my favorite. Now I love the Hellraiser, so yeah. So after that, and I'm not saying all of this happened in one night. This is just the span of the 2 days. As I should have said that before, because I believe Hellraiser was the first movie we watched on the Sunday, and I think the Halloween thing was like the last thing we watched the Saturday. So I left it on a light note. I don't like to like watch heavy, dark movies before I go to bed. Not because it'll trigger nightmares or anything, but I just like to leave, you know, on a happy note. But anyway, so the second movie of the second day was the 2021 The Sadness. A young couple is pushed to the limits of sanity as they attempt to be reunited amid the chaos of a pandemic outbreak. The streets erupt into violence and depravity as those infected are driven to enact in the most cruel and ghastly things imaginable. So maybe keeping with tradition, I don't know what to call it. I had to throw in one of those, I guess, controversial, disturbing, whatever movies in there, but I didn't want to go into the, I don't know, the depths of the list that I have seen in the past, because I'm like, I don't want to be too traumatized again. If you know, you know. But in short, 2021, I did pick a couple movies from the disturbing movie list, and it was on a website that has a lot of disturbing movies, and I'm like, I would like to watch a disturbing movie, but I don't want to watch a traumatizing, scarring movie again. And I've heard a lot of things about this movie. It definitely had like a lot of chatter, a lot of talk when it arrived into the internet, into the streaming sphere from a lot of people, that this was just pure absolute madness. And if I remember correctly, I'm not sure, I could be wrong, I think this was based off of a graphic novel. That's my guess. I could be wrong. I'll put a correction if I am wrong. But they were right. This movie is pretty effed up. That's all I have to say. No, I lied. That's not all I have to say. This is definitely not a movie for the faint of heart. There is a lot of depravity and gore and aggression and violence, and when I do these endurance runs, I do put warnings like, hey, this movie has this, this, and this, and if you're gonna get triggered by it, don't watch it. And this is definitely one of those movies that I'm like, if you're gonna be triggered by any of these things, you probably want to skip out on this movie. And it definitely had that. And as crazy as this movie is, I wouldn't mind watching it again, because it wasn't too scarring for me, but the amount of just, I mean, I don't know if this is what it's like in the comic, if I am correct in my memory of it being an adaptation, but seeing what I saw is something that I've never seen before, kind of. Like, yes, it's a thing that came out during a pandemic, 2021, that was definitely height of pandemic, we were trying to like somewhat get to normal, but we weren't quite there. So I can see that being like inspiration, like perfect timing. And it's not your typical like, oh, they get a virus and now they're just a bunch of zombies or walkers or what have you. These mindless creatures that just want to turn you and eat your brains. Oh no, there is more to this. As the description says, that they turn aggressive and they're just very violent and depraved. They mean it. Not only are they going to rip your limbs up and laugh and smile and enjoy every moment, not only are they going to like eat pieces of you, but they're gonna do other things that falls in that depraved part. Like, I remember vividly, like, there was a moment where one of the characters was like, oh, well, let me save this guy who's tied up to a pole, getting punched and hit by these group of men. I will save him because obviously they're infected. But no, this dude that was like tied up that he thought that needed saving was also infected and was enjoying being beaten. There are moments of sexual depravity. It is a lot of chaos and a lot of madness, and you really are in it with these characters of what's going on. You're really rooting for them to like get out of this craziness, and it's just like nothing I've seen before. And I've seen some zombie movies, I've seen infection movies, but the amount of stuff and things that were going on, it was good. That's all I have to say. So, the next movie after the sadness was Incantation, another foreign horror movie that I've heard a lot about, and it was just everywhere when it came out on Netflix. Inspired by a true story of a family who believed they were possessed by spirits, this film follows a woman who must protect her child from a curse. So, this 2022 movie got a lot of good reviews, from what I can tell. A lot of people like this one. And I was very happy to add this along with the sadness so I can be in the know and, you know, keep up with everybody's talk about streaming, because honestly, I don't really stream a lot except for when I do Discord stuff, so that's my opportunity to, like, hop on the bandwagon, try to see what's, you know, hot and trending, even if it's a little bit late. Squid Games. But, so this was a found footage type of movie, and those can be a bit hit or miss. I know there are people who are big fans of found footage. For me, like I said, it has been hit and miss for me. There's the infamous Blair Witch Project, which I know lots of people love that movie, find it absolutely scary. They just are like, this is where it all began, and I'm like, sure. And I mean, I know this is how it made that genre popular, was Blair Witch, and I will give it its flowers for that, but I am not a Blair Witch fan. One of my favorite found footage movies is Rec, or Record, and I also liked the remake Quarantine. So, to watch a found footage type movie from another country I was interested in, because, you know, people from around the world have different points of view and how they're going to execute certain subgenres of horror, and that's what makes it fascinating when you look at other countries' stuff. So, to watch Incantation was, once again, a very enjoyable ride of, where is this going? Are things gonna be okay? When are they gonna be alright? Why are these things happening? So there's like this curse, and the seal's broken, and then there's possession, and there's not really an exorcism type thing. That's more of like incantations, just like the story, like the title suggests, and trying to save a child, and she's in peril, and you have to make sacrifices, and all these unusual things happen, but it's not like the usual stuff that you would see in like possession stuff. Like, sure, there might be some familiar like elements you've seen from other movies, but they take a creative new twist in executing those familiar elements, and I appreciate that. So, if you have not seen Incantation, you should check it out. It is definitely not as depraved and crazy as The Sadness, but I did enjoy the journey that this movie took me, and I wouldn't mind rewatching it again, especially knowing what I know, and perhaps seeing if I notice anything different that I like missed the first time watching it. After that, I popped in a DVD from work, and it was Night of the Animated Dead, an animated retelling of Night of the Living Dead, in which a group of people in a rural farmhouse struggle to survive the threat of bloodthirsty zombies. So, I believe the year before last Halloween Horror Endurance Run, which was 2021, I did stream Night of the Living Dead for the very first time of me watching it, in dedication of one of my coworkers who said that that's one of his favorite movies to watch on Halloween. And so I was like, yeah, let's watch it. And I really enjoyed it, even though I knew what the ending was, because I have watched countdown lists and like breakdown history stuff of how important and iconic the movie was, especially for black representation. So I was just curious how this animated Dead was going to be, and pretty much as the description says, it is just a retelling. So if you've seen Night of the Living Dead, I mean, you know what the story is. You're not going to be surprised or anything. It's just the same story, but animated. I do remember, as I was logging it in to Letterboxd, that there was some criticism on the animation style and how it was lazy and they could have done better and it was not worth making an animated version. And it seemed like I like this movie more than a lot of the commenters on Letterboxd. I thought it was perfectly fine. I had no problem with the animation styling. I thought it was pretty good. It reminded me a little bit of the Walking Dead video game series by Telltale. So, I have no idea what they're talking about. The story, just as good. I didn't think this was a waste of time. It was great seeing it in a different perspective as, you know, being animated. But it kept the essence of what made the last one good. Although the ending didn't like have that same impact, probably because it was animated. I don't know. I mean, there's some animated stuff that do have emotional impact, so I retract my statement on that. But I did enjoy it, for sure. Would it be the one that I would pick to watch, like, say, like, oh, watch the animated one? That's my preferred choice. I'm going to pick the original, watch the original, but the animated version is not bad. I thought it was perfectly handled. After that, we watched Re-Elected. Friends battle former U.S. presidents when they come back from the dead as zombies on the 4th of July. This was another rental from my job. It was on my list of things I wanted to like watch, because like, why not? It looked like a terrible horror movie, and I kind of have a soft spot for movies that look like they're gonna be bad, and oh my god, the jokes in this one, they're funny in like some of the dumbest ways. The premise is so stupid, and the way like the president's coming back to life is just hilarious. Like, okay, the humor in it, it could either be like dumb, stupid, bad to some people, but it can be also like dumb, stupid, like this was like kind of funny because like I have like dumb humor sometimes. I know like one of my friends who was watching with me was just like, oh my gosh, this was like the worst, but it was funny. And I felt the same way, but I think I found it a little bit funnier than she did. And I didn't think it was a waste of time. I think if you want something silly, dumb to just put on, Re-elect It is completely harmless and was not a waste of time, and I enjoyed every minute of it. It's definitely not the best horror movie. It's pretty low budget, D tier list movie. It's really silly and dumb, but I had a lot of fun and it made me laugh, and it was okay. Next, we went back to the past with request from Bonnie, formerly known as Gwen of Ventura. She requested Haxan from 1922. Grave robbing, torture, possessed nuns, and a satanic Sabbath. Benjamin Christensen's legendary film uses a series of dramatic vignettes to explore the scientific hypothesis that the witches of the Middle Ages suffered the same hysteria as turn-of-the-century psychiatric patients. But the film itself is far from serious. Instead, it's a witch's brew of the scary, gross, and darkly humorous. So, I don't know what, Bonnie thought she was getting herself into when I started Haxan, but it wasn't what she expected from what I remember her telling me. But she enjoyed it nonetheless. I enjoyed it nonetheless. There were parts that were pretty humorous, especially when it's just like, and these witches do this. Aren't women crazy? Nudge, nudge. It was definitely of its time, and it was also just remarkable how people could make such imagery back in 1922. I was very, I don't know. I was admiring, how they were able to pull off some of the stuff. And some of the stories were interesting. They were just, breaking down different stories and theories and stuff they've read in folklore, or how they treated, women in the Middle Ages and why they are witches, and this is how you tell who is a witch, and they do these XYZ habits, or how they thrive, how they control men, all these other things, and being like, see, if a woman in these days of the 1920s acts like this, it is actually a hysteria that we need to cure, and that's why they're evil, or we need to control them, or whatever nonsense. And some of the stuff that they said is hilarious, now, because it's oh, well, now we know what that actually is. It's actually this. She's just having a panic attack. Calm down. But it's also interesting, looking at it as, nowadays, men still don't understand how women work, and it's just clearly this person's crazy, and it's just no, you cheated on her with her sister. She's not crazy. She is upset. Reasonably so. Those kinds of thinking, it's interesting just to compare how they view women back then and now, and even looking at how they compare women in the 20s back to the Middle Ages, and them being we were so silly, it's actually this, and this is how you cure this, or these are the tools that we would use, and it's just you probably shouldn't do that. I think that just will make her feel worse, or, you might kill her. So, I don't know. Haxan was quite interesting to behold. if you're into witchcraft and stuff, definitely check it out. Also, if you're into, like, I guess, psychiatry? Psychology? I guess it's psychiatry. How people thought curing, like, women was going to work. It's definitely quite the treat. I don't know, that's not the right word. It's quite the watch, is what I'm trying to say. I kept with the old feeling, not quite as old as the 20s, but the 70s with Lord Shango. A tribal priest returns from the dead to take his revenge on non-believers. The blood, the shot, the sacrifice of the Shango ceremony. That was the tag-along, by the way. This was one I believe I either had in a challenge or part of the Black History magazine thingy that I saw. Oh, okay, I had it for a challenge. It sounded interesting. It wasn't one that I, like, had on a watch list or anything. Yeah, this was definitely purely for the challenge. It was interesting. I always, ever since I, like, joined Letterboxd, it's given me lots of opportunities to check out black films from, like, the 70s and 80s and being like, huh, this strangely still kind of fits to, like, what's going on now. So, with this movie, there's this man who, I guess he's trying to reconnect with this woman who's part, I guess, of, you know, your regular old Christian religion, and he's part of this tribal like, not cult, but tribal group. Like, they believe in a totally different religion that seems very, I don't know, not really cultist, but definitely tribal-ish, very old. But he gets killed, and then I like the description says, he tries to get revenge on the people who killed him. But the woman in question struggles between these two religions of what she should believe, what does she feel home with, but she longs for this man that she loves. And it makes me think of, like, we still have those types of struggles as black people when it comes to religion, where it's just like, oh, should I, you know, stick with my own religion, or, you know, go with my tribe, or, you know, stick with your family, or, you know, go with something that's different, whether you're struggling with, like, I don't know, for example, like, should I stick with my family or stick with my chosen family, if you get my coding. So it made me think of those kinds of things. I thought it was a pretty decent film. Like, I'm glad I watched it. It made me think. It's not a movie from the 70s as far as, like, black-made movies, one of my favorites, but I'm glad that I watched it because it did make me think of some things. I think there's some other movies that explore this a little, like, better, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Ganja and Hess, which I did stream. I believe it was on Discord. It could have been another streaming platform before I switched to Discord, but it kind of reminded me of that a little bit. Next was the original Prom Night from the 80s that had Jamie Lee Curtis. This slasher movie follows a relentless killer who is out to avenge the death of a young girl who died after being bullied and teased by 4 of her classmates. Now high school students, the guilt-ridden kids, have kept their involvement a secret. But when they start being murdered one by one, it's clear that someone knows the truth. Also coping with the past are members of the dead girl's family, most notably her prom queen sister, Kim Hammond. So I purposely picked this movie because I have only seen the remake with Brittany Snow. So I've always wanted to see the source material, the original, especially because everyone loves Jamie Lee Curtis as their scream queen. I like her too. She's a great, fantastic actress, but I just like her as just her being a talented actress, not because of her scream queen status. I don't know why I'm having a hard time saying that. Did I like it more or less than the remake? I mean, I liked it about the same. They're both pretty goofy. They're both not very good slasher movies. I mean, they're okay, they're decent. Like, if you watch them, you'll probably giggle at how, like, silly they are, or how not very good they are. I don't know. It wasn't anything stand out for both. I mean, I guess the original has an edge on the remake a little. I mean, you have some backstory and some interesting kills, whatnot. Has Jamie Lee Curtis in it. I remember the conclusion kind of being a little unsatisfying in a way. I don't know. It's just like, yep, that's the end. And it's like, yep. And that made me want to like rewatch the remake because it's been a really long time. And yeah, the remake's still like not great, but I remember it not being super great. But I remember it a lot more than I remember the original, which is saying something. So maybe I like the remake a little bit more because it's more memorable. But either way, both of them are not very good slasher movies. They're very meh slashers. So sorry for those who really love Prom Night. Last but not least, the closer was I want to call him Ronald. It's not Ronald. Roald Dahl's The Witches. So the 2020 Witches remake. In late 1967, a young orphaned boy goes to live with his loving grandma in the rural Alabama town of Demopolis. As the boy and his grandmother encounter some deceptively glamorous but thoroughly diabolical witches, she wisely whisks him away to a seaside resort. Regrettably, they arrive at precisely the same time that the world's Grand High Witch has gathered. Full disclosure, have never read the book, but I have seen the original at least a couple times, maybe even 3. And I think maybe in a previous Endurance run, rewatched the original just to like relieve some of the heaviness of some of the movies. This is how I get through the Endurance run. I try to have an even like, let's do something a little bit more R-rated and serious and maybe like crazy, and then we'll have something light, like a nice little family film or a comedy or something or other. So this was me trying to like lighten it up a bit, especially because I was winding down into like, I'm getting really tired and I want to like close it out. And I remember this particular movie and Prom Night I had to rewatch like the next day because honestly I fell asleep on like somewhere in the middle all the way to the end, but I did want to know what happened in both movies, so that's a good thing. It means that I cared to know how it concluded. So how does this compare to the original? I do remember Mr. Dahl not liking the ending of the original movie because it did not follow the book and it gave it its happy ending, while this one apparently follows the book's ending of, like, spoiler, he does not turn back into a boy, he stays a mouse or whatever. But, I, for the most part, thought this was okay. The CGI was a little weird, mostly with Anne Hathaway's character as the Grand High Witch. Yeah, it's fine. I think the most standout person, even though she plays practically the same character all the time, is Octavia Spencer, but I thought she was okay, and having Chris Rock as the narrator was fine too. Pretty much just in short, the movie was okay, but something about that original was just a little bit better. Maybe it's a nostalgia thing, I don't know, but they're both, they're both decent movies. The remake is harmless, it just is a little longer and doesn't really add too much different other than, you know, better visuals. So there's that. So anyway, that are all 15 movies that we watched during the Halloween horror endurance run. I will leave a link in the description if you want to check out that list. And if you enjoyed this, you know, fairly decent review of a bunch of movies, you can click that like button. And also don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'll see you guys in another video.